let's talk about beauty schools. What if I told you that most of them in America are actually built on a really fragile billion-dollar system that often leaves students buried in debt? Well, in this explainer, we're going to dig into a new national report that blows the lid off this system and reveals a pretty radical, debt-free alternative that, honestly, could change everything. All right, here's our game plan. First, we'll unpack the billion-dollar problem sitting right at the heart of the beauty industry. Then, we're going to put two competing educational models head-to-head. After that, we'll look at a debt-free blueprint that's actually working right now, the fight to protect it, and, of course, what this all means for the future. So, let's get right into it. Okay, so let's start with the core issue. It turns out the entire financial structure of most beauty schools in the US isn't really built on students paying tuition directly. Nope, it's built on a single, really powerful foundation: federal student aid. And the scale here is, well, it's kind of staggering. According to this report, cosmetology schools all across the country pull in more than $1 billion in federal aid every single year. We're talking Pell Grants, direct student loans, the whole shebang. So where does all that taxpayer money end up? Well, it trickles right down to the individual student. This billion-dollar system means the average cosmetology graduate walks out the door with about $10,000 in federal debt before they've even earned their first paycheck. The official name for all this money is Title IV funds. And here's the part you really got to understand. For a ton of these schools, this isn't just some extra cash. The report finds that anywhere from 75 to 95% of their entire revenue comes from these taxpayer-funded programs. Their business model is federal aid. And you can probably guess what happens when you're that dependent on one source of income. All of a sudden, tuition costs balloon. Some programs cost up to $25,000. The main goal shifts from making sure students succeed to just getting more bodies in the door to capture that aid. This creates a system ripe for fraud and builds incredibly fragile businesses that can and do collapse overnight. And this isn't theoretical. Just look at the Maranello Schools of Beauty. They were one of the biggest chains in the country. Federal investigators found widespread fraud. We're talking fake diplomas, bogus attendance records, all of it designed to grab as much of those Title IV funds as possible. When the government finally shut off the money spigot, the entire chain just imploded. It left thousands of students stranded with a mountain of debt and no degree to show for it. But the report makes it clear this isn't the only way to do things. There's a totally different model emerging, and, when you put them side by side, the contrast is, well, it's just stunning. Okay, this slide right here really lays it all out. On the left, you've got that traditional, federally funded model: super high tuition, tons of debt, and a pretty shaky business. But now look at the right, the non-Title IV model. The example here is a school called Louisville Beauty Academy. It just flips the whole script. Tuition is just a fraction of the cost. And this is the kicker, zero student debt, and the business is way more stable because it only focuses on whether or not the students actually succeed. So let's zoom in on this alternative, because it's fascinating. The report holds up the Louisville Beauty Academy, or LBA, as a real-world case study for what it calls the debt-free blueprint. It's a fantastic look at a potential solution. LBA's entire model is built on these three big zeros. They have completely opted out of the federal aid system. That means their students graduate with absolutely no federal debt, and there's zero financial risk to taxpayers. It's a clean break. This quote from the school gets to the heart of their mindset, which is just fundamentally different. Instead of looking at state regulators as an enemy or an obstacle to overcome, LBA sees them as a partner, as a teacher. And that completely changes their approach from being defensive to being collaborative and always trying to get better. And that philosophy, it leads to some really smart, practical innovations. They use biometric fingerprint scanners for attendance, which makes fraud basically impossible. All of their student records are digital and ready for an audit from day one. They offer support in multiple languages and keep their tuition low and totally transparent. What they're proving every single day is that integrity and efficiency can completely replace a reliance on federal cash. And the results? They speak for themselves. The report highlights LBA's incredible student outcomes, a 95% completion rate and a 90% job placement rate. This is the hard data, the concrete proof that this debt-free, high-integrity model isn't just some nice idea. It actually delivers way better results. But, a model this disruptive doesn't just show up without a fight. The report goes into detail about the significant pushback from the established, aid-dependent schools in the industry. It's a classic David versus Goliath story. And the reason for the conflict is simple economics. I mean, think about it. If a small school comes along and proves you can provide excellent training for just a few $1,000s, it's a direct threat to a business model that needs to charge $20,000 backed by federal loans. LBS success basically exposes the inefficiency of the old system. According to the report, this threat leads to some pretty aggressive tactics. We're talking about weaponizing state boards by flooding them with complaints just to trigger disruptive investigations, lobbying for complicated new rules designed to crush smaller competitors, and even spreading misinformation about these non-Title IV schools. So, all this brings us to the final and maybe the most important question. What happens now? The report doesn't just point out the problem, it actually offers a detailed blueprint for how to fix this on a national level. It lays out 4 really clear policy recommendations. 1, states should actively support and incentivize these debt-free schools, make it easier for them to open and operate. 2, mandate digital, fraud-proof documentation for everybody, level the playing field. 3, explicitly prohibit using regulatory boards as a weapon to hurt your competition. And finally, number 4, create a formal recognized pathway for students who want to get their training completely debt-free. This final quote from the report it really sums up the whole idea perfectly. It argues that the real path forward isn't about bigger budgets or more federal aid. It's about smaller, community-focused schools that put integrity and transparency above everything else. And ultimately, that leaves us with a really provocative question. This report uses the beauty industry as a case study, but it's making a much, much bigger point. It shows that a debt-free, high-outcome model isn't just possible, it's already here and it's thriving. And it forces all of us to ask, could this be the future for all vocational training in America?